Duthier concludes the quatre melody with Fantasio, on a comical text by another lesser-known poet, André Belsoeur, whose dates are 1866 to 1942. Fantasio evokes the Renaissance Commedia dell'arte and finds its inspiration from either the time Duthier spent admiring the paintings he so loved in Florence, or the stage play by the same name, written by Alfred de Musset. This delightful narrative recounts the protagonist's most unfortunate death against the lively backdrop of the Italian Carnival. In this song, Duthier seems to find a poem that fits his comic approach to music, which he illustrates so well. In the piano introduction alone, he writes a fanfare that alternates major and minor chords, creating a rather comical, even clumsy effect. Almost every phrase in Belsoeur's text begins with an instance of tragedy and ends in reveling. Duthier spins these phrases by commencing in a minor mode and finishing in a bright major key. In the overall tonality of C minor, he offsets sentiments of mourning and reveling with contrasting harmonic colors. An example of this is Et tu fus enterré le soir du carnaval, which begins in a solemn F minor to depict the burial. This is followed by lively staccati and festive appoggiaturas to evoke the gaiety of carnival with glimpses of D-flat major. Similarly, Une marche funèbre à l'heure tambour de masque begins in A-flat minor to depict the funeral march, followed by F major tonalities to resurrect the lively tambourines in the opening theme. Duthier organizes the structure of the song by repeating the same music for each recurrence of the text, Pauvre Fantasio. In addition, he uses a fan shape, or palindromic compositional technique, to highlight the climax, again at the golden section point in measure 72. He does so by composing a sense of accelerando, followed by a moment of suspension and silent panic, for Nul n'avait pris le temps de revêtir le deuil.
Susanne, j'ai brillé
The quatre mélodies, though not traditionally cyclic, are similar in many ways. They all share the use of golden section point and hairpin climaxing techniques. They highlight the contrast between major and minor tonalities, and have texts from relatively unknown poets. Dutilleux was the only major composer to set Belle-Sœur and Morse. Alfred Foudrin was only Alfred Foudrin was the only other to set Gentil, and Anna de Noailles was only set by a handful of composers, including George Beach and Camille Saint-Saëns. Moreover, he chose texts, sounds, and forms that all belong to and look back at an earlier generation of artists. Though they were all published by the Édition Durand, Dutilleux only acknowledges Fantasio and Pour une amie perdue as part of his œuvre today. After his return to Paris, Dutilleux became a member of a musical movement called the Front National, a group sympathetic to the resistance movement, specializing in propaganda, the fabrication of false identification documents, and providing logistical support to clandestine organizations. This group included the musicians Irène Joachim, Roger Desormières, Georges Auric, and Marcel Michalovici, many of whom introduced Dutilleux to the works of Béla Bartók and the Second Viennese School. Through their association, he became aware of the limitations posed by the conservatory curriculum and decided to study Stravinsky and Roussel privately and delve into different treatises on composition, and most notably the treatise of Vincent d'Indy. Though he had achieved some success with the Quatre Mélodies, Dutilleux had not yet found a particular poet through whom he could project his true musical voice, and certainly not one to help him express the personal gravity of World War II. His admired friend and composer, Jean Alain, was killed at the age of 29, and his brother Paul spent 5 years as a prisoner in the Stalag 8C. The conditions of the Stalag were dreadful: starvation, disease, and maltreatment to the heavy death toll. In addition to these personal traumas, Dutilleux was equally moved by the appalling sufferings of the Jewish community. Together, these horrific experiences led him to find solace and expression through the writings of Jean Cassou. Cassou, whose dates were 1897 to 1986, earned prestige as a novelist, modern art journalist, and editor of Le Mercure de France. In 1934, he became a member of the Comité de Vigilance des Intellectuels Antifascistes and director of the politically charged review Europe in 1936. Shortly after, he began writing for Jean Zay, the Ministre de l'Éducation nationale et des Beaux-Arts du Front Populaire, and was sent to work as an adjunct creator in 1939 at the Musée National d'Art Moderne in Paris. In 1940, he joined the resistance movement and began writing his first leaflets in association with the clandestine Groupe du Musée de l'Homme. After seeking refuge in Toulouse, his political activism led to his arrest, and he was sent to the prison at Forgol in 1941. It was here that he composed his 33 sonnets composed in secret, which are clandestinely published by the Édition de Minuit, the 33 sonnets composés au secret, in 1944. These poems are especially unique in that Cassou was not allowed access to writing utensils during his captivity. As a result, he had to memorize all 33 of the sonnets while imprisoned and write them down upon his release. The sentiments evoked by the poet during this period mirrored those of Dutilleux and served as a spiritual voice for his songs. Let us now examine our second group of songs. The first song Dutilleux set to Cassou's poetry, La Jole, was originally conceived for baritone and orchestra, and first performed by Gérard Souzet in 1944. A subsequent arrangement for baritone and piano arrived in 1946. Though the original orchestrated version of La Jole is far superior to its arrangement for piano, This does not mean that the latter does not warrant performance in a recital hall. It simply proves Dutilleux's worthiness and genius as an orchestral composer. Je m'égare par le pic neigeux, the original title of the sonnet, was given the name La Geôle by Dutilleux, not Passou. This title is a colloquial term for prison or jail. The text exquisitely depicts a man who is lost in the mountains, a metaphor for being trapped within oneself. His cries are in vain, as he is suffocated in the deafening isolation. After his emotional struggle, in a dreamlike hallucination, he sees a distant land that is hopeful and free. The song begins with a sinuous phrase in the lower register of the piano, or low strings in the orchestra. This phrase, in conjunction with the bass line quarter notes, introduces a sense of unease and helpless wandering, lost and alone. When the voice enters in measure 5, one notices a tonal center moving around C sharp. This melody almost seems weighed down by gravitational pull. While employing a sense of tonal structure, Dutilleux retains his love of 7th and 9th chords as they abound throughout the piece. The poetic intensity on the words vagabond enfoncé sous la voûte de sa propre plainte leads to a dramatic orchestral interlude reminiscent of late Debussy. A soft, pleading text is offset by subtle syncopations in measure 25. This introduces a slow crescendo that builds to a semi-climax in measure 33. Here he shifts to a low, dark, and muffled section on the words Les prisons sont en moi mes prisonnières, leading to a climax in measure 40. After this intense, crashing apex, a subtler C-sharp repetition hovers at the extreme octaves in the keyboard. These send the listener gently into the highest peaks of the mountains, so high that the poet's call can no longer be heard, lost and alone. The last 20 measures of the song form a very consonant, dreamlike conclusion, with a sense of resolve to this unsettling poem. Structurally, Dutilleux composes this melody in many small sections that are woven together by dynamic and textural scenes. These sections create a restless sense of twisting and turning along a path or labyrinth, which has been set before the poet. Dutilleux more or less abandons any sense of classical structure or use of golden point sections as done previously. This does not, however, interrupt the natural arc or coherency of the song.